Hello and welcome to Sports with Achin Jr. I'm your host, Achin. In 1946 in Douglas, Massachusetts, the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees played an exhibition game here at Soldiers Field. Among the players that day were familiar names like Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio. How did these two teams end up playing each other in my little mill town? This is why I'm here today. I started at the public library just down the street. I sat down with Rebecca LaValle, local historian and archivist. I'm sitting with Rebecca LaValle, local historian archivist in Douglas. Hi Rebecca, it's great to meet you, and can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here?
Hi Carl, good to meet you too. I am an archivist at the local library, and what that means is I take the historical papers and artifacts and I catalog them so that people are able to do research.
So how long have you been working here?
I've been working here for about a year and a half, and I have a degree in archives from Simmons College in Boston.
In 1946, the Red Sox and Yankees game was here in Douglas. It's still something that people like to talk about.
Yep, there was a lot going on. What a lot of people don't realize is that baseball actually started in Douglas long before 1946. Baseball actually started to become prominent in Douglas in the 1890s. There were a bunch of kids in high school that weren't attached to a high school baseball team like you would have today, and these kids started off having sandlot games, and from sandlot games it kind of evolved into more of a, not a league game, but organized baseball.
So kind of like the Sandlot movie that they made.
Yep, they started off like the Sandlot movie, and then they went more to what we would know as like a Lassie League or a Little League or the Babe Ruth League. They kind of started to evolve a little bit. One of the most prominent people as they evolved was Walter Schuster, who people in Douglas would know as being the owner of the Schuster Mills. At that point, he was just a ragtag type of kid in town, but he slowly moved up. Now, these kids played baseball until they finished high school, at which point they could no longer continue really playing baseball to that level because they had to go to work to help feed their families. They weren't able to devote the time to baseball that they could when they were in high school. So Schuster ended up starting to look more into league play. And what he did is, through his connections with the mills, they were able to start sponsoring these local teams that created leagues that they played against each other. The Blackstone Valley League started in 1925, and it really went to 1930. And during these years, they actually had a lot of what we would call prominent baseball players come in and out of town, and they were a semi-pro league. They weren't just a bunch of kids. They actually did have semi-pro status.
Now getting back to the baseball thing, did any of them win professional?
There were a couple in Douglas that did manage to go, or not Douglas, but the Blackstone Valley that did manage to go professional. I believe there were two in town that were at least semi-pro, Henry Coppola and Clarence Gagney's father.
Oh, so he was also.
Yep, Clarence Gagney, which is where I got most of the information about the big league player, not the big leagues, the Blackstone Valley League. He had actually written I don't want to call it a book. Clarence Gagney, what he had done is he had gone through newspaper clippings, both from the library, from the Gazette, from all of that, and he basically was able to piece together what the Blackstone Valley League was and how it started and what its importance was. And from there, he wrote up different sections, and he almost created a scrapbook with the newspaper articles. Well, when he finished, he actually gave a copy of this to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York.
Really cool.
And they said that it was one of the most well-organized examples of a small baseball history that they found. And that's actually where a lot of the information that we have today came from.
The Hall of Fame.
Well, from this book that
Oh.
Gagne gave to the Hall of Fame. And so there's a copy of this work at the Baseball Hall of Fame, and there's also a copy of this work at the Simon Fairfield Public Library in conjunction with the Douglas Historical Society, if anybody ever wanted more information.
So how many players made it to the majors were from the little town of Douglas?
Well, the most important, or I'd say the most prominent one, would probably be Henry Coppola. A lot of people recognize the last name Coppola because his son Anthony wrote a book called They Raced Horses on Main Street, which is a history of Douglas during the early 1900s. So the name Coppola is well recognized. In 1935, Henry was 20 years old, and he was a player for the Washington Senators.
Wow.
He talks about a couple of major points during his career that he likes to note. His favorite was that he won against the Boston Red Sox. He had a 5-hit shutout against the Boston Red Sox. And he also pitched to Lou Gehrig. He says that he faced Gehrig about a total of 12 times, and the first time he faced him, he was able to get Gehrig to pop out.
What was his record against Gehrig?
I do not know what his record against Gehrig was. The most we could find was just a couple of little articles where he talked about his career. These articles were written when he was 70 years old, so 50 years after the fact that he had actually played against them. Unfortunately, he only managed to play in the majors for 3 years. He was...
Before to the war?
Nope, he was actually plagued by a sore arm, and
Oh, no.
they didn't have the technology or the medical advancements that they had today, so...
Yeah, there was Roger Clemente or Pedro Martinez.
Yeah, he wasn't able to go Tommy Johns or anything like that, unfortunately, so...
Or Chris Sale or anybody,
Yeah, so he was able to play from 1935 to 1938 with the major leagues, and I mean, the first year he went 4-3 with the Washington Senators.
Did he win a World Series?
He did not win a World Series. So that was probably one of the most prominent Douglas players that made it to the major leagues.
But if you played for the Yankees or Red Sox, you're probably going to win the World Series.
Well, he wouldn't have won the World Series with the Red Sox at that point. Thank you for pointing that out. Maybe if he was a Yankee, he might have, but not while he was a Red Sox. You Yankee fans. But since we're fighting about the Yankees and the Red Sox, maybe we should talk about the 1946 Yankees-Red Sox.
Yeah. So what brought it to be in Douglas? Was you told me about the Cleveland Indians and the
Right.
Red Sox, yeah.
So it was 1946, and it was the 200th anniversary of the town of Douglas. On top of that, 363 men and women returned from serving in World War II. So the town decided to hold a 4-day celebration in August where they had parades, dances, testimonials, memorial services, you name it, they had it. And it was decided that at the end of the celebration, the last day, they were going to have a Major League Baseball game and fireworks. How were they going to get a Major League Baseball team here? Well, Win Schuster, the son of Walter Schuster, who actually really got involved with the leagues in the 1920s. His son was a prominent player during that time period. Well, while he was playing, Win Schuster made friends with Joe Cronin, who was the manager of the Boston Red Sox. On top of becoming friends with Joe Cronin, he developed a relationship with the Yawkey family, who was the owners of the Red Sox.
Yawkey Way, where Red Sox entered the ballpark.
Exactly. So even though Yawkey was kind of against having exhibitions, he allowed this game to happen. So it was originally supposed to be the Boston Red Sox versus the Cleveland Indians. The day of the game, it downpoured. Torrential rains, nothing could happen. The fireworks show had to be pushed off a couple of days. So instead, they saw what they could do. Well, the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees were playing at Fenway Park the couple of days before September 26th. They had a two-gamer. Well, they both had a day off, and the next game was the Washington Senators were coming into Fenway. So they decided to have the exhibition game on September 26th, and it was going to be the Boston Red Sox versus the New York Yankees.
Where did they play the field? I know it was Soldiers Field now, but it was Schuster's Field back then.
Right, so originally when the Schuster family started playing baseball back in the 1800s into the early 1900s, there was this field where we know today as being Soldiers Field. It was owned and maintained by the Schuster family for the benefit of the community. They allowed different members of the community to use it, but it was their field, it was near their property, it was privately owned. So during the 1946 celebration of the town, what they did is Schuster dedicated the field to the different soldiers. There has been talks that there was a little bit of unsurety on what to call the field, because calling it Soldiers Field would mean that it was really just the Army.
Yeah.
And you had members of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and all of that. But in the end, Schuster held fast and said, nope, I want it to be called Soldiers Field. So it was renamed Soldiers Field during the 46 celebration. However, it was still owned by the Schuster family. In 1983, the Schuster family gave the field to the town of Douglas. Since then, it has been the town of Douglas's property. They have maintained it. Kids have played Little League, Lassie League, Babe Ruth League, and all of that.
Big league there. When the Yankees and Red Sox play, that's the big one, and they have a small one next to it.
Right. Now today it's mostly used for
High school stuff.
more of the Babe Ruth, since the high school now has their own field, but for quite a few years the high school did not have a field and they would play at Soldiers Field. In 1996, it was the 250th anniversary of the town of Douglas, so they had a celebration regarding baseball where they had local men from town play as the Yankees and the Red Sox.
Cool.
And during that celebration, you did have some old players.
Don DiMaggio
came back. Johnny Pesky came back. You had players from that original 46 team.
Was Johnny Pesky on that team?
Johnny Pesky was on that team.
And you have to see the World Series in 04 and then the passing away.
Yep.
Didn't you see one in 07 too?
I believe he saw one in 07.
Oh, so he saw the 2 ones and he passed away after.
Yep. But
DiMaggio, he saw 2 ones and the Red Sox on him and he passed away in 2010, I believe. Same with Ted Kennedy.
Yep, so you actually had these guys come back and they got to see their old field. Now, a couple of other notable people that have been in Douglas or have played for Douglas. Hank Greenberg stayed at the Douglas Hotel for an entire summer. He's in the Hall of Fame. Lefty Grove never played in the town of Douglas, but he wore a Douglas uniform in Worcester to help Douglas win a championship. So you have had quite a few. In fact, 62, I believe the number 62, men who are in the Hall of Fame either played in the town of Douglas or they played wearing a Douglas uniform before they were Major League ball players. Some even while they were Major League ball players.
That's pretty cool that they're on in Douglas, even though they didn't play in Douglas or they didn't live in Douglas. So.
Yep. When the baseball originally started, it was the players it was local players, but as time went on, they got much more competitive, and they would call ringers in to help them win.
Now, was this before Jackie Robinson's era or after him?
It was before the Robinson era.
Oh, so there was only like white guys playing on the team.
I am sure that there were only white guys playing on the team. Yeah, because the heyday of that was 1924 to 1930. There was a little bit later on, through the 30s it was still there, but it started to become more of it became more of a high school league again. It started generating more towards high school players, and at one point the league did get together and basically ban professional ball players from playing individual games.
What's the great show, not the off subject, was the Jackie Robinson movie? I haven't watched all of it, but I watched some of it at the beginning of the great movie to see what the white players did, the black guy was there and do.
Yep, it was definitely a very not good time in the history of baseball.
But now there's people like Dave Ortiz, Luis Severino, Mookie Betts.
Yep.
And everybody gets along now, but back when they didn't get along now.
Yep, back then it was a very different time period, but things have changed and we thank God for that.
Yeah. And how many Hall of Famers were in that game that made the Hall of Fame? I know Ted Williams did.
Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio. You also had Bobby Doerr. You had Joe Cronin, who was the manager for the Red Sox. I am not sure about Yankee Hall of Famers. I do not know them as well as I know my Red Sox Hall of Famers, but I do believe White was one of them.
I thought Red was one of them. I thought I read that somewhere.
There's a very good chance, but on the Red Sox at least there were 3. And then of course
How about Don DiMaggio? Was he Hall of
Don
Fame?
DiMaggio never made it into the Hall of Fame.
I'm surprised. His brother, his friend Ted Williams did.
Yep.
Joe Cronin, his manager.
Well, Joe Cronin was also a player, if you remember.
Well, who did he play for, Red Sox?
He played for the Red Sox. I believe he played for a couple of other teams as well, but he played for and he managed the Red Sox, and I believe at one point he was a player manager for the Red Sox.
Kind of like Alex Cora will be a manager. He played for you guys, won a World Series, and now he's...
Exactly. Unfortunately for all of us Red Sox fans, the Red Sox ended up losing 8-7 that day. However, the 2 best hitters, the last one to hit 400.
Ted Williams.
The last one, I believe, a hitting streak of 42?
What, Joe DiMaggio?
42 hits, 42 game hitting streak, was it? Joe DiMaggio?
I thought so, Joe.
Yep. Well, those 2, neither one of them got a hit that day.
Oh, no. The pitchers were better than...
Well, it was an 8-7 game, so it was a slugfest, just not a slugfest involving the 2 best sluggers at the time. And in a small town of Douglas with a population of 2,600, and I believe we looked it up, it was about 34, 12,000 people came to Douglas to see this game. They actually had to bus people in from the city of Worcester.
Wow.
Because there was no way for everybody to park.
So some New Yorkers that came, there was some Boston people here?
And everybody, tons of people came, 12,000 people came.
How much were the tickets back then?
I don't know. I don't know how much the tickets were, but
Because nowadays they're a lot expensive than going to the game back
yeah,
then.
I bet you the people
I couldn't win in
probably...
the Yankee Stadium.
Yep, I bet you people didn't spend more than $5 on a ticket.
Now, if you want to go see the Red Sox or see my Yankees, you have to go to Baltimore, but it's cheaper than that, and the Yankee Stadium from the box.
But nope, these 2 teams played on Soldiers Field in 1946.
Who was the Red Sox owner back then?
Yawkey.
Yawkey, oh.
Yep. Yawkey was the Red Sox
I read
owner.
that somewhere, I remember.
Yep, unfortunately I do not, like I said, I do not know as much about the Yankees as I do about the Red Sox.
I have media guides on both teams so I can look back at my house and stuff.
Yep, but so that was what happened back then.
Thank you for your time.
You are welcome.
What a great interview that was with Rebecca. Thanks, Rebecca, for sharing a great story how the Sox and Yanks came to Douglas. Thank you for watching Sports with Achin Jr. This has been Achin signing off.